Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It has been quite a while since I posted a video. As usual, life changes and things come up, they get in the way of the hobby. I'll give you a quick rundown. Basically, I ended up moving for a job into a one-bedroom apartment. Didn't really have room for the layout that I currently had and didn't have the time or the energy to build another one, and kind of got out of the hobby. Other things come up. Um, Ended up getting married, so now I had a wife, and so we were starting our life together. And but then a couple years ago, I don't know, all of a sudden I got the bug again and started buying things and looking at things, watching YouTube videos on people building their layouts, and got to thinking, I thought maybe I can build one to fit. And so I started coming up with a plan to try and fit one in the apartment. It was going to be a small, just 7 foot layout, just do a little switching, you know, work on my skills as far as scenery goes and wiring and everything that comes with doing a model railroad. But then we ended up buying a house and moved. So now that we're moved in, kind of settled down, I've got a spot in the basement that I think will work for a layout. And so started coming up with a plan for that. And pretty much what we're going to go over today. Nothing is actually built yet. It's all still in the planning stages, but to the point now where I think I've got enough set in stone, quote unquote, that I can make a video and kind of show you guys what's going on. As you can see on the screen, it says Michigan Central Rail Corps. That's going to be the name of the railroad that I'm going to model, freelance, and we'll move on here and we'll talk a little more about it. So the planning stage, which is still pretty much going on. There were some things I had to decide what I wanted to do to kind of get an outline of what the layout would be. So I knew I wanted a modern era layout. That's just what I like. Kind of looking at 2012 plus, not really setting it in stone. So, in the future you might see equipment that is maybe too new for what I'm modeling, or maybe too old, but there's just some things that I like, and if I want them on the layout, they're going to be on there. Location wise, I'm from the Midwest, Michigan specifically, so it's what I'm familiar with, what I can see, what I like. So the layout will be set in the Midwest in Michigan. Deciding whether I was going to go to be prototype, freelance, or proto freelance. It's pretty much going to be a freelance, although it is based on actual areas. So I guess you could call it proto freelance, but the railroad does not exist in real life, but some of the trackage and the locations do. What kind of cars I wanted on the layout. I really like box cars and I really like coil cars. I don't know why. They're just kind of some of my favorite ones. I think the box cars is because everyone says they're a dying breed, so it's neat to still see them. And then I like tank cars and hoppers and flats. Those are kind of the cars that I have and I wanted to have on the layout. So I needed industries that would, utilize those cars. Motive power. The railroad's a regional railroad, so basically they're going to have a lot of secondhand EMD power. I prefer EMD over GE, just personal preference. So there's going to be a variety of things from small switchers to, the standard 38-2s and 40-2s to some rebuilds that I want to try and make. So that'll be what the power is. Be some leasers and some patchwork, typical short line / regional motive power. And then I had to figure out the operating style, whether I wanted to try and build a switching layout or something that was like a point-to-point, running across. The space I have is about 10 by 7 feet along 2 walls, so it's basically going to be a shelf layout. So that pretty much, in my mind, cut it down to a switching layout, more or less an industrial park, to fit it in the space and have it be realistic in my mind to where the customers can be big enough to require rail service, and try not to cram a bunch of small buildings in that would not need rail. So this is a map that I made up of basically the entire system of what the Michigan Central would be. This actually almost did happen late 2007, 2008. The tracks you see here, the white lines, were all owned by Norfolk Southern, who was basically looking to get rid of them. The line from Michigan City to Kalamazoo, I think, might have been owned by Amtrak at the time, but everything else from Elkhart to Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo over towards Ann Arbor, Detroit area, and then the branch you can see there from Jackson to Lansing was all owned by Norfolk Southern. Like I said, they were looking to get rid of it. Watco was going to purchase the lines and actually call it the Michigan Central. But it ended up falling through. There were some concerns about a non-railroad entity owning all of it and running it. So what ended up happening in the real life is Watco did get the line from Elkhart to Grand Rapids, and that's their Grand Elk operation. Norfolk Southern retained the freight rights to operate basically from Detroit, across through Jackson to Kalamazoo and down into Michigan City. The line from Kalamazoo towards Detroit is owned by the state of Michigan, and Amtrak owns the line from Kalamazoo to Michigan City, and they dispatch all of that. And then a small private company, the Adrian and Blissfield Railroad, they purchased, or I should say they leased, the Grand Elk, they're both leased from NS, the line from Jackson to Lansing. But in my world, I'm saying that two investors came in, basically said, we will create a railroad, run it as a railroad, we'll take over the whole operation. And so they did. So, the Michigan Central Rail Corps was created around late 2007, and now they operate the lines shown here. And but with that said, looking at this, I obviously could not model this entire area. You're looking at a little over 250 miles of railroad, and I just don't have the room for that. So that means, I'm pretty much going to have to try and model an industrial area, which unfortunately, with all this trackage, there's not really an area that has a dense industrial park. There's quite a few industries throughout this line, but nothing that has anything close. Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, they both have a lot of industry in them, even down towards Elkhart, but nothing that would be close enough without doing a lot of condensing, and I just didn't really want to do that. Mason, Michigan, which is about in here, there is an area where there's some industries that are closer together, but they didn't, or I should say they don't get the cars that I was looking for. There is one packaging company there that gets box cars, and then there's a steel facility north of there, so I either would have had to move that down or tried to just have the cars basically flow through the layout and not actually spot them. I decided that it wasn't going to quite work for what I wanted to do. And then down here in Jackson, there's a small, I think it's 3 or 4 miles. There's a branch that goes down to some industries, but again, they're spread out. So basically, that translated into me making up my own industrial area. And so we'll talk about that on the next slide here. So this is over in the Ann Arbor area. This is the line that runs east and west, basically from Detroit down towards Burns Harbor, Indiana. Willow Run Yard is right up in this area. There's nothing really going on there today. And down in here, there were some GM plants that closed and were torn down. So in my version, the plants came down, and then basically the city and the railroad came together as a partnership to turn this into an industrial park. There's rail access here. There's a Y that comes under the highway. And so that's where my layout focuses on this fictional industrial park. And that's what we'll look at next. This is the plan that I currently have. I could tweak a little bit, but this is probably what's going to end up being built. Looking at it here, north would be to your right. So the main line is up in this area, and then there's the bridges for the freeway here. I had thought about modeling them to kind of act as a view block, but they would take up a lot of space and it would shorten all this up, so I decided to not do that. And so with all that said, now it came down to deciding what industries I wanted so that I could get the cars I wanted to model and have on the layout. In the upper right here, currently Heartland Lubricants. The names could change. It's just what I picked for the time being. They'll get carloads of DEF for diesel engines. It comes in bulk, and then they package it however the customers want it, and it's distributed basically around the area of Detroit. Towards the front is going to be a transload site. Really like those because they allow you to create some variety as to what comes in and off of the layout. Currently, I'm thinking about having covered hoppers come in with animal feed of some kind that'll be unloaded into trucks and distributed. And then they also might load out glass cullet in open hoppers. There's a company that does it in Grand Rapids, and I've always thought it was kind of a neat operation. Berry Plastics is just an industry. I wanted something to get some plastic hoppers in. There's room for about one car there. Midwest Steel is what I came up with to get the coils in. They might get some flat cars with steel on them for some variety, but it'll mainly be coils. Wolverine Packaging, another made-up industry to receive boxcars of paper rolls, to make boxes. And then Gypsum Supply, they'll get center beams with gypsum wallboard in and be unloaded in the flat paved area there. And so that's the industries that I've got right now. Basically, Wolverine, Midwest, and the Transload are the anchor industries. Pretty much getting switches 3 to 5 days a week. And then Gypsum, Berry, and Heartland, they'll be like once a week industries. That way the layout doesn't become congested, but it also give you the variety. Every now and then you get thrown in a different car, go to one of these other industries. And so that's pretty much what's going to be. There's room to the right for some staging. So basically the trains will come in off the layout from the upper right, come in, do the switching, run around, and then go back towards the yard. Or they could shove out if the train was too long. And then this here is just some artwork of the paint scheme that I came up with. I do want to do my own custom painting, which is something new for me. I've dabbled in it just a little bit, but not enough to really say so. but this is just an example. It's basically a GP35 that I'm saying they bought and modified it into a GP38M. You know, that's something fairly common on short lines, to buy older power and then have it rebuilt so that, you know, they can get some more lifespan out of it. But that's pretty much an overview of the layout. Hopefully start getting it built maybe here in the next month or so. Along with that, you know, I'm going to be dabbling in some other new things, the painting, adding of detailed parts to both locomotives and cars, and working on some new scenery, stuff that either I have not done at all or I haven't done in a long time. So hopefully it goes well and I can get some videos put out and share with you guys how things go. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and hope to see you again here soon.